Streaming games to your TV or monitor via your internet connection or any device anywhere. No need to buy an expensive gaming PC, Xbox or PlayStation. Just a regular subscription fee, say $10 a month, and you'll have access to all of the latest and greatest game releases. Is this a big part of the future of gaming? Is it possible and is it realistic? Well, let's take a look at what comes before, what's available now, and what's been announced to release in the next few years. Hasn't this been attempted before though? Yes, you're right, it has. And not particularly well executed as it happens either. Ahead of its time, you might say. But before we get into that though, I'll let you guys know that all of the 1080p 60 FPS gameplay footage you'll be watching in this video has been recorded personally by myself on a game streaming service created by Nvidia, currently in beta, called GeForce Now. And it's not actually running locally on my own PC. Now we'll go into that in more detail shortly, but first let's go back in time for a second and talk about a service called OnLive. OnLive was founded back in 2003, but the part that you'll most likely remember is from 2010 when they announced the OnLive gaming system. This was a piece of hardware that consisted of a controller and a small console. It connected to your TV, so you could directly utilize the OnLive system without needing a computer. It could use up to 4 controllers, as well as having USB ports for keyboards, mice and other peripherals. The idea was simple. You buy a piece of hardware for significantly less than the cost of a high-end PC or even a gaming console, and then you rent or purchase games through the OnLive system. Those games are not installed locally, but instead they're installed from a local server, and you get a video stream of the game sent to your OnLive console or your PC if that's what you were using. The idea is very simple. For people who can't afford to buy a high-end PC, you could still play the latest games at maximum settings at a fraction of the cost. And it sounds pretty cool and ingenious, right? But in reality, OnLive was ahead of its time. Now there are a lot of similar concepts around today that we'll talk about in a second, but OnLive promised to be the next big thing at the time, but it turns out that we just weren't quite ready for it back then in terms of demand and internet speeds. But it wasn't without its problems though. Two of the biggest problems with the OnLive system was the video feed and the input lag. When you're not playing the game on your own system, you of course need to be provided with a video feed. Just like if you were watching a Twitch stream or a YouTube video, the quality will never quite be as good as if your own system was rendering the game directly to your monitor. It just wasn't possible back then, no matter how good the rendering is. The other problem was input lag. Think about this for a second. You see your video feed when you're playing PUBG. You see an enemy and you try to move your mouse from right to left to get to your target. Normally your game would receive that input almost instantaneously, but when you're using a streaming service, you need to send that signal through your internet connection to the server that's running the game, which will then receive that input and execute it before the video feed then comes back to you with the updated action. Now that can be done quite quickly, but there was a noticeable input lag with OnLive systems, and it changed depending on what game you were playing and of course based on your internet connection. Bit of history for you now. In April 2015, Sony acquired the OnLive patents, and by the end of April, the OnLive services were discontinued. And Sony of course now operates the PlayStation Now service, which is a very similar service, but that's built on the infrastructure of Gaikai, which was a former competitor of OnLive. PlayStation Now gives you a system to what OnLive did, except of course it's older PlayStation games that are on offer. You pay a subscription each month and you get a catalogue of PlayStation 2, 3 and 4 games that you can play via cloud streaming. Interestingly, you can utilise PlayStation Now on either your PS4 console or on PC. But what about Xbox though? Well, as of now, Microsoft doesn't have a matching service. They have the option of streaming your Xbox games to your PC, but that's not the same thing. That could soon change though, because there have been a lot of rumours circulating recently that Xbox have something in the works. Unsurprisingly, it's been reported that they're working on a new, more powerful Xbox console, a classic type of console you'd say, much like the Xbox One X, where you buy games, install them and run them from home. Nothing too crazy there. And then though, there's also rumours that they're creating a much lower priced streaming only console codenamed Scarlet. The idea for this console would be very similar to what OnLive did. It would be a separate small console that would be priced lower than the next generation Xbox console, and it would have a subscription that would allow you to cloud stream your Xbox games rather than purchasing them directly, and you would pay a monthly fee. This is certainly a different approach to that of Sony, who instead are focused on providing their PlayStation Now service as an addition to their PlayStation console, with more of a back catalogue of games rather than separating it. There have been rumours though that PlayStation are also working on a new game cloud streaming system which would give you access to new titles as well as old. But I think one of the reasons that Sony or Microsoft can provide a better streaming service is that they aren't reliant on it as a sole part of their business. OnLive, back in the day, on the other hand, were. Now this potential Xbox Scarlet system will have a small hardware box to handle things like controller input, image processing, and even a small amount of game processing too. And then the bulk of the game will be running on the cloud, and it will essentially be stitched together. Xbox already have an array of servers around the world, so providing suitable servers worldwide for a service like this I don't think would be an issue for a company of their size, especially with the infrastructure already in place. For this reason, it's thought that the latency of the Scarlet would be a big improvement over other systems. The thought process is that if the Xbox games, say a multiplayer game, is using the Microsoft Azure servers to power their game, then the Scarlet servers are going to be extremely close physically, and as such would provide a better performance when it comes to latency. This of course is all a theory right now though, because until we get our hands on it directly and even confirm its existence, it's all just rumours and speculation. Even still, the idea that more companies, especially of Microsoft's size, are going down this route is really interesting to me. But Microsoft, Sony and Xbox aren't the only ones either. EA, Electronic Arts, recently showed off their new cloud-based gaming service behind closed doors at E3, and some members of the press were present and were allowed to report on it after the fact. I didn't go and test it out myself, but I heard good things. The idea, at least from EA's point of view, seems to be that they want you to be able to play games anywhere that you could watch Netflix. Maybe that's a low-end PC or a laptop or even on your phone, and I feel like lots of companies are now headed in that direction. And if you've been listening to the yearly and quarterly earnings calls from EA, you'll know that they've name-dropped game streaming a lot, so I feel like EA are going to try and push this hard in the near future. But what's available now and who is doing it the best? Well, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned a service called GeForce Now. And as I said, all of the gameplay footage I've recorded has been using GeForce Now. So this is me playing the game on my PC via a window that pops up that's connecting to a server in Western Europe and running the game on an Nvidia machine over there, and then sending the image back to me. So in theory, I could be playing PUBG at 1080p, 60 FPS on a banged out old laptop, as long as I've got an internet connection that's good enough. So currently GeForce Now is in closed beta, and the system is a little bit different from the others that we've mentioned. The way that GFN works is that it provides a cloud system to run games that you already own. There are some free games on there though, but in practice it's pretty simple. You load up the program, pick the game you want to play. It could be a Steam game like PUBG, it could be an Epic game like Fortnite, or even a Uplay game like The Crew or Assassin's Creed or Rainbow Six Siege. And then when it starts to load up, you'll be asked to log into your Steam, Uplay or Epic account depending on what game that you picked. It will then act as though you're playing the game on your own PC, but of course it's actually being run off the cloud. There are some free games on there too, like I said, and I imagine that more will be added down the line. But for now, whatever you own, technically you can play. Unfortunately, Origin isn't on there, so no Battlefield or FIFA for example, and I think this might be because with EA developing their own cloud-based service, maybe they don't want to give their games away to Nvidia so easily, but maybe they can work something out and everyone will be happy. So I tried a number of games on GeForce Now. I tried PUBG and Fortnite for the multiplayer experience, with a little bit of Far Cry for the single player, and even The Crew 2 for the racing side of things. And I have to say that the service at the moment, considering it's in beta, is pretty impressive, but it's not without its flaws. How well it works really depends on the game that you're playing and your internet connection, and honestly, I think it comes down to a little bit of random luck at the moment. The guys at Nvidia provided a code for me, and I've been testing it over the last couple of days, and the video feed that you receive sometimes is just better than others, and I think that's just down to the nature of it coming across the internet. Now my connection is 100 down and 18 up, which isn't the fastest in the world, but it's pretty good. But I think that when more households start to get fibre internet connections and they become much more affordable, which will happen in the next 2 to 3 years, you could be streaming games to your system, whatever that is, at a very high bitrate, resolution and quality that will look almost as good as you're playing the game locally on your system. Now then, to get into specifics, some games were much more noticeable than others. For instance, PUBG on the new map Sanhok, because there's a lot of foliage, it's just bad for the quality of the video. And that's just the way that software rendering works. If there's more information, then there's more to encode, and you're going to see artifacts, and it's going to be easier to notice that this is a video stream. So when you start running through the foliage and jungle areas on the new Sanhok map, the difference in quality drop is noticeable. And then of course the input lag. I have to say that for the most part on GeForce Now, the input lag is pretty good. When I was playing The Crew, I could race easily without feeling like there was a big delay. The same could be said at times for PUBG and Fortnite. And I actually ended up winning a game of Fortnite using GeForce Now. But because these are hyper-competitive shooters, I have to admit that while they are playable, there will be situations when you notice the delay in the input. And this will give you a disadvantage against people playing on their own systems. In Fortnite, for example, when you're trying to build super fast and you get into a close range shotgun battle, those fast aiming movements are really important, and I have to say that I struggled a bit with those when playing through GeForce Now. At times it was good and at times it was bad. Likewise in PUBG, it's all about recoil control, and those fine adjustments that you need to make really fast when you're spraying were quite difficult. It is manageable at times though, but I found it quite frustrating at other times too. It just feels a bit inconsistent at the moment. Also, there were times where if your connection wasn't up to scratch, it would drop the quality to 720p and a lower bitrate. And whilst you can still play the game, it does make identifying targets difficult at longer ranges. So I'm hoping for a bit more consistency there. Overall though, GeForce Now, I'm incredibly impressed with where it is. This is a beta, remember, and I think that you could happily enjoy playing games like this, and I think that it will only get better as internet connections improve and the hardware that Nvidia are using to compute all of this data and encode it, that's going to get better and the whole thing will just speed up. It's a good start, and at the moment GeForce Now is doing it best because I can log in on any PC, any old laptop, have access to my Steam account, my Uplay account, I can play Fortnite on Epic, I can play Overwatch on Blizzard, Destiny 2 for example. So it's like you're on your own PC but it's being streamed. And if you wanted to use Discord or TeamSpeak, well, those programs run on Mac and PC as far as I'm aware, so you've got that option there too if you wanted to communicate with your friends. It's all very promising at the moment, I think, and I'd love to see where this goes. This isn't the first time Nvidia have done something like this though. They've also been working on their cloud system Nvidia Grid, as it used to be called, for some time now. And of course the Nvidia Shield and the Nvidia Shield TV have been around for some time with this capability. But I think GeForce Now, the fact that you can run this on PC and Mac and on a Shield device is very impressive. Is this going to be the future of gaming though? Well, I still don't think it's quite there yet, but I do think it's headed in the right direction. When OnLive released, I don't think the internet infrastructure or the hardware was there yet, and I just don't think that people wanted or needed a service like that. But nowadays, when you think about how people consume content on Netflix and Amazon and HBO Go, Google Play, it doesn't take a genius to work out that people are going to want to do that with gaming soon. It's cheaper and you can potentially get it anywhere. I think PlayStation Now is doing a good job for console, and with the rumours around the Microsoft Xbox console, I think that game streaming could become really popular in the next couple of years when people start buying these smaller, cheaper systems and not having to pay for expensive consoles and expensive games every now and again, rather just a $10 a month subscription fee. When this starts to become the norm and people accept it, it will really take off. I think a lot of gamers and press at the moment though just don't believe in the technology and that it can work. And that's going to take some time for people to try the hardware themselves. And honestly, in my opinion at the moment, I think it's working okay. But at the same time, the reality is though that it's never going to be as good as the real thing. You're at the mercy of the bitrate and the internet gods here, and when I was playing Far Cry 5, I did have notifications coming up telling me that I had low bandwidth, and as a result that was dropping the quality down to some pretty bad levels. I've played Far Cry 5 all the way through on my own system at 1440p, and the difference in quality is very noticeable. That will improve over time, and I think that it could be a solution for some people, especially with hardware prices being so high. But I reckon mostly for single player games and casual multiplayer games it's really going to shine. If you wanted to play competitive shooters and be your best at FPS games, I don't think it's quite there right now. Will that improve in the future? I hope so, we'll see. Inevitably, the hardcore gamers are always going to want to have their own PC and console that's natively running the games. But there it is guys, that's my look at game streaming, where it is and where it could potentially be. And I hope you enjoyed this video. It did take a long time to put together. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.